Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be cooking up some barbecue sauce. This is one of the new things I want to get on the pantry shelves because we have an abundance of tomatoes between me and my dad and other family members, and people just giving me stuff because they're tired of it. So I got a lot of tomatoes and we are going to be processing them for barbecue sauce. Now we like sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, and that's one thing I'm going to try to be imitating today. I've actually never tried this recipe, so I looked up several different recipes and kind of conjured the amounts that I would like to use. I will type up the regular recipe for just 1 pint jar if you want to try it. And then if you want to say make 4 pints or want to do 2 quarts or more than that, you can go ahead and even quadruple the recipe, which is what I'm going to be doing today. So I'm going to be making 4 pint jars, and this will get us started. I've got to see how much of the tomato base I have left because I've got several recipes that I want to make, and I need to get that sauce out of the pan so I can throw in another batch because I've got tomatoes everywhere. They're on my counter, they're in boxes, they're sitting on the floor. I've got them everywhere, so I've got to keep rolling. But in order to get what I want on the shelf, I've got to do several different recipes. So the first one we are doing is a Copycat Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. Let me show you what we're going to need for it. So first off, you've seen us make the tomato base recipe. This is just a tomato sauce that I'm going to cook down with all of the seasonings, and it's going to go in the pot and cook down to become barbecue sauce. Some of the other items that we need is going to be liquid smoke is optional. We need Worcestershire sauce, apple cider vinegar, paprika powder, garlic powder, light brown sugar. It calls for Dijon mustard. I don't have any Dijon. I'm going to try honey mustard because this is going to be sweet anyways. I'm going to use, and it's just a little bit amount, so I don't think it's going to affect anything. And then some molasses. And I have sorghum molasses, which is locally processed here. So we've got our ingredients together. You need a thick bottom pan to cook this in because it's going to simmer for a long time. I got this one at Sam's. It's probably no longer available. And I believe it's a Calphalon 8-quart pot. It does come with a top, and it is my favorite to process my jams and jellies and sauces in because it has a thick bottom and I've never had anything to burn in it. Okay, so I'll harp about you guys about making recipes your own. The longest processing thing in this is going to be the tomatoes. There's no onions or carrots or anything like that. Now, if you start varying to different vegetables in this, as in your tomato base, if you start throwing in all those extra vegetables, you will have to change your time for processing at the end in jars to make it shelf stable to the longest processing time for that particular vegetable, basically because of the density. So if you puree everything into a tomato base, it should not change anything in your processing time. But we are just going to use tomatoes in here with our seasonings, and I may try throwing in some extra things later, do a little more research myself and do some extra things such as that to bulk it up if I don't have enough tomatoes. One thing I want to throw in here is the recipe down below. You're going to see it's going to call for tomato sauce. The original recipe for the 2 cups or the 1 pint recipe, it's going to call for 1.5 cups of ketchup. Okay, so the tomato sauce that you just seen that we cooked down in one of the last videos, it is not completely cooked down to the thickness I want it. So it does have some extra liquid. So in the recipe, you're going to see it's going to call for about 1/4 cup of water. I'm going to eliminate that water because my sauce has extra water. And it's just because your ketchup may be too thick, and you may need a little extra water to cook it down a little bit. So the water or tomato liquid is already in the tomato sauce, so I'm just going to cook it down and eliminate that water. So that is one of the variations that I wanted to let you know that I am changing from what you are going to see as to what I'm actually going to be putting together in the recipe down below. I will type out beside it what I do in the video, so you will have the different variations between the original recipe that I come up with and what I'm actually using because of having all these tomatoes to process. Now, I do have a ketchup video. I will link either up here or down below. I do have an Amish recipe ketchup. Now, it does have most of these ingredients already in it, and it is a little more spicier ketchup. So I actually did not want to use that ketchup in this recipe to throw off the flavors, because it has vinegar, it has the brown sugar in it. It has a lot of these ingredients in it, and I just didn't want to overpower the barbecue sauce. I wanted to start with a good, simple, plain tomato base, which is going to be the tomato sauce. Or you can use, like it says, a regular plain Jane ketchup as your base. The only thing you'll have to change, like I said, is the water. So what I'm doing, I'm actually going to quadruple the recipe. So I've got it wrote down here that I'm going to be using, this is going to make 4 pints or 2 quarts, but I'm going to go ahead and do the pints just because we don't use a whole lot of barbecue sauce. And so when I'm doing the 4 pints, we are going to quadruple it, and it's going to make 8 cups. It's actually, if you do 1.5 cups of ketchup, it's going to be 6 cups of ketchup down below. But since I'm using the tomato base and I want that little bit of extra water, we're going to use 8 cups of the tomato base sauce that you've seen in the roaster oven. And that's simply because of the water content. Everything else is just quadrupled. So let's get it started. So the tomato base over there in the roaster oven, it still has seeds in it. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got 8 cup measured out. I'm going to run it through my food mill here and just let the liquid and juices come out the bottom and keep those seeds out of it. So let me just pour this in here and get this filtering. And anytime you're processing something with tomatoes, go ahead and clean up as you go. Because if anybody knows, tomatoes will dry out and get stuck everywhere. So as you see right there in the food mill, all of those seeds are getting stuck and not going through those holes. So whenever you are using a food mill to get seeds out, just make sure your holes are smaller than the seeds that you're trying to get out. And it won't be no problem. Alright, so all you see here, all we got left are the seeds. So these will actually be going to the chickens. Put an apron on because you're working with tomato stuff. So we're going to bring this to a boil, and then we are going to let it reduce down a little bit. The key with a thick sauce like this is make sure you don't boil it too high, because it's going to pop and splatter everywhere. You can put a top on this and just leave it vented, because the whole reason of cooking it down is to get it thicker. Well, to get it thicker, you've got to cook the liquid off of it. To get the liquid off of it, you have to let it evaporate. So that's why some things are covered and some things are uncovered, especially in cooking and baking. It depends on if you need to keep the water in or let the water out. So with this, we want to let the water out, but we don't want to make a mess in our kitchen. You can put a screen splatter, or you can put a, like I said, a lid on it and just leave it vented so that the steam can come out. Just make sure that you watch it so it doesn't burn on the bottom. Keep it stirred occasionally. Let me see how this cooks down. I've got it on high right now. I'm going to turn it down when it starts boiling, and then I'm just going to let it simmer probably for about 20 to 30 minutes. And I'm going to stir about every 5 minutes just to check the thickness and see how it is coming along. So I've got about 15 minutes left on this boiling if I go with the 30-minute mark. And I'm going to start getting my water bath ready. Now, I use the bottom of my pressure canner. You can also use just a smaller deep pot. It needs to be at least 3 inches over the top or deeper than your jar, because you need, in a water bath, this is going to be water bath, so you've got to have at least 1 inch of water over your jar, so that way your lid and ring and everything warms up with the jar and it all compresses and seals together. So we are going to fill this up. I have to take my knobs off because my canner won't go all the way back on the eye. So I'll take my dowels off. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this on high. And then I'm going to start by pouring a gallon of water in it at the beginning. So in the bottom of your canner, make sure that you have the plate that goes on the inside, because you don't want your jars touching the bottom of any pan. If you don't have a disc that goes in the bottom of a pot, say you're using a regular deep stew pot or something like that, you can also fold up a towel and put in the bottom of it, and that way it keeps your jars off the direct heat of the bottom of the pan. What you can also do is use your canning rings and turn them where the flat lip is on the top side. You can lay those around in the bottom of your pan, regular mouth, wide mouth, whatever you want to use. If you're using pint jars, you really want to use regular mouth. If you're using quart jars, you can use either one, just because the bottom of the jar could fall inside the wide mouth and then it's not doing you any good anyways. So you can put those on the bottom of your pot in order to keep them up off the bottom. Several people use different things, just as long as it's something flat and your jars don't tip over and it holds it off the bottom of your pot. Also, during this time, you want to go ahead and get your jars out. Now, like I said, this is supposed to be about 4 pints, and that should be about it. It may be just a little over 4 pints for this recipe, just depending on how much more it cooks down. So I'm going to go ahead and get at least 5 pints ready and have them sitting on my warm stove top. I am going to put hot water in them because this is hot and it's going into a hot water bath, so you want your jars to stay hot as well. You want to keep everything the same temperature, because if you're going from hot to cold to hot, it can cause your jars to bust. The bottoms will break out of the bottom of them, and you really won't know it unless you hear it until you go to pull them out, and as you lift your jars, all your contents fall out the bottom. Not a fun sight. I have done it before. So with this being super hot and boiling and it going into boiling water, we want to keep our jars as warm as possible. Another bit of advice for new beginner canners. This is a water bath canner recipe. So this is just like you do your jams and jellies. Now, what I want to point out is that you do not have to use canning jars. During a water bath recipe, you do not have to use specific canning jars. You can use old mayonnaise jars, you can use old jelly jars, you can use whatever you want to, just as long as you have the matching top, or you have a top that is going to be able to fit a regular or wide mouth lid and ring. That would be preferable, But if you happen to have like an old jelly jar that has the wax one-piece ring top, you can use that. Just make sure that it does fit and there's no problems with the wax ring. You can revive the wax ring by simply putting it in some warm water and allowing it to soak for about 30 minutes. Just a light simmer, not cooking it or not hard boiling it or anything, but just enough to have the steam coming off the water. Let it soak for about 30 minutes. It will plump right back up and then you'll be able to use it. Now, I know you specific rule following canners out there might get onto me, but it has been done. It is quite fine. And like we always say, do your own research. So, like I said, you don't have to use canning jars for this. And you may ask why. If you're a newbie, I want to explain why. Canning jars are specifically made to the thickness that is going to withstand being under pressure for pressure canning. Water bath canning is only heating everything up enough along with the acidity to safely preserve your food. It's going to heat it up, it's going to expand, and whenever it contracts back down as it cools, that's how it pulls that seal down in the top of your lid. So like I said, you don't have to use canning jars if you don't have them. So what I'm going to do now is put some warm water in my jars and just allow them to sit here amongst all of the warm items on the warm stove top. Just wait until we are ready to jar our sauce up. What you can also do at this time, just because I'm putting hot water out of the faucet, what you can do is go ahead and sit your jars inside of your water bath canner. And that way you keep everything good and hot and your jars actually come up to temperature with your water. Don't do this if it's already boiling. So mine is just steaming, so it's just about as hot as it would come out of the faucet. So that way everything is going to stay warm with the water inside, with the water outside. And then all you have to do is just pour your water that you have in your jars out into the canner, the water bath canner, and it'll go ahead and warm up while you're filling up your jars, and you'll be set. Okay guys, I'm not even gonna lie. I have sit here and cooked this down for about 20-25 minutes, okay? I have tried it. I have doubled everything but the sugar because it was so extremely sweet. And I like sweet. This was too much, and the longer it cooked, the sweeter it got. So I went ahead and ended up putting 8 more cups of tomato base in here, so I'm up to 16 cups. And then I have I've doubled everything else. So I'm writing down what I'm changing as I do it. I also have added a teaspoon of celery seed, which actually 2 teaspoons now. 2 teaspoons of powdered celery seed, or you can put in some celery salt and just don't add any more salt. The recipe did call for salt and pepper to taste, so that is totally up to you guys. So if you use celery salt, just do what I recommend down below. And I'm going to fix what I have typed out down below is going to be the correct one. So I just wanted to jump in here and tell you real quick that I am making some adjustments to this recipe because it was so extremely sweet. You couldn't even taste any tomato. You couldn't eat, there was like, whenever you, because I've got some Sweet Baby Ray's over here, just the regular original, and I have been trying to mimic it. So as I'm tasting this, I go taste it. Whenever you taste the store-bought, it has an immediate punch of the sour, the tang. Sweet is last. This was so sweet, when you put it in your mouth, all you tasted was sweet. There was no tang. So as I started to increase the other ingredients before I started adding too much of the tomato juice or tomato sauce, I noticed that the tang was starting to move up. It was starting to come forward. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to make sure I have everything doubled in here, but the brown sugar and the molasses. So in the original recipe I have down below, it's actually going to be half the amount that I started with. Half the brown sugar and half the molasses. So follow the recipe down below. It will be correct. And it will be so extremely close to the original recipe for the Sweet Baby Ray's that you buy at the store. It's pretty dang close. It is pretty dang close right now. I've got it pretty darn close. But like I said, I did add the celery because I was looking on the ingredients on the back, and most everything that we have in our dish is in Sweet Baby Ray's, minus the pineapple juice. Now, if you want to add that at your own risk, I have no clue the amount, but this was so sweet, I opted not to add pineapple juice. I'm sure you could add some. Now, in the beginning recipe, for just the 1 pint, I wouldn't add any more than maybe a couple of tablespoons. And it's not much. The more liquid you put in it, of course, now note, the longer you're going to have to cook it down. The only other thing I saw on the store-bought Baby Ray's is the celery seed. They have celery seed in theirs. I didn't have celery seed, so I added celery salt. And everything else was a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons. So I just went ahead and added 1 teaspoon to the quadruple that I did. So a 1/4 teaspoon of celery seed or celery salt for the original recipe. But anyways, like I said, I just wanted, since this is a test recipe that I've never done before, I wanted to tell you the changes that I made from the beginning of the video, and I hope you've watched this long. If not, I will have the correct recipe down below if you just want to copy it. So we are continuing to cook this down. I've got to start over with my 30 minutes because I've since added so much more to it. So now I have to cook it back down, but it is so smooth. It is so pretty. And I mean, it looks really good and it tastes great. It smells good. I can't wait till Steven gets home from work. He's gonna be like, oh my God, that smells so good. Okay, so I've reached the point where I think it is thick enough. So whenever I pull this out and I tilt it sideways, you can see it's pretty well staying on there. It's not like jelly, but if I hold it up, tilt it off, it's staying on there pretty well. Because once this cools off, it's going to thicken up as well. And it's, as I stir it, it kind of jiggles. I don't know how else to kind of tell you guys how thick. Now you can cook this a little bit thicker if you want it just a real gelatinous paste. It's going to cook a little bit longer. And this did take, with me doing my own sauce, it did take about 30 minutes. And of course I had to do it twice since I had to double it. You'll just have to kind of get it to the consistency that you like. And as well, back here in the back, since I had to double the recipe, I went ahead and put in plenty of jars. Hopefully, let's see, I've got 8 back here, and if that's not enough, I'll go ahead and fill up a 1.5 pints that I have over there, and we'll just use it first. being a test recipe, I want to go ahead and make sure I cooked it down long enough. So this is actually going to sit out on the stove and it's going to cool down. So whenever it's cool enough to put in the refrigerator, I'm going to get it cold. I want to check it at room temperature, and then I want to check it again whenever it's cold. I'll bring you back and show you that, guys, to see how thick that it actually got. These in the water bath are going to process for 20 minutes. And then once they have processed, then we will get them out and let them sit for 24 hours. I will show you what they look like, but that'll have to be tomorrow. So stick around. Let's see the final results and the final taste test. So real quick, this is the next day for the barbecue sauce. It did separate just a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see that around the edge there. Just a little bit of watery liquid. And if you want it thicker, cook it down a little bit more. But this is doable for us. When we don't like the big gloppy gelatinous, type of sauce. We like it where it's going to get in all the cracks and crevices. But that is the day after. I did have everyone try it last night. I want you guys to see. I mean, it's pretty thick. It stays on the spoon. It's pretty thick. And everyone tried it last night. Everyone loves it. We can't wait to actually use it on our barbecue roast and such like that. But yeah, I think this is going to be a winner for us. It's definitely going in my recipe book. Sorry I'm having to finish this on my phone because my card is not in my camera and it's in the computer right now. I don't have time to fool with all that. So anyways, guys, thank you for stopping by. Let me know if you have a recipe you use for barbecue sauce. If you like it sweet or tangy, leave some comments down below. Don't forget to wait on the next video I have coming. I have one more recipe I'm going to share with you. So in this little tomato base series, we've got how to make tomato base sauce. And then we've got barbecue sauce. And then I also wanted to share, I did spaghetti sauce last night. It's nothing special. That stuff is thick. Look at that. I also cooked this down extra to be able to use it for our pizzas. So it is pizza and spaghetti sauce. I just cook it down really, really thick so it doesn't make our pizza crust soggy and it'll spread better. So I actually did that one last night. I just used the Mrs. Wages pasta sauce and cook it down extremely a lot. And then just can it up just as spaghetti sauce and pizza sauce. So we've got the barbecue sauce. And then I used it to make the spaghetti sauce, which I did not do a video on just because it's the prepackaged thing. And then I've got a video coming out after this one. That's going to be one more recipe, and that's going to finish up our tomatoes that we have in the kitchen at the moment. There'll be more later, but these are the first 3 recipes I needed to get on the shelf. So thanks for stopping by, guys, and we will see you later. Bye!